Welcome back to another video. Today we are having a nice, cozy, autumnal video. We are going to do some self-care. We're going to relax. It is a very rare day indeed in which I get the entire day off, and so I will be using this day productively because I don't rest. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm Anna. I'm a full-time book editor and indie author. I currently have one book published, which I actually have right here. It is titled When Stars Burn Out, and I have been working diligently on its sequel for many, many years now. The sequel is actually, I've got the draft right here. It is titled A Dark Sky Opens, and today we are going to be finishing the read through of this book. So you know when they say after you finish drafting a book, you should let it sit, you should let it rest, and you should just give yourself some time and space to gain some objectivity about the story. That is where I am now. To be clear, this draft is not finished. There are a few chapters that I still have left to write, but I wasn't quite equipped to write them because, to be honest with you, I've been working on this draft for so many years that I have literally forgotten some of the things that I've foreshadowed, some of the things that I've included. And I'm gonna be honest, it felt kind of dumb to go in blind and just write those chapters without really knowing everything that I had already foreshadowed or not foreshadowed. So that is the purpose of today's video. We are going to be reading through this entire draft. We've got 600 pages here, front and back. We're gonna read through the entire thing, we're gonna take notes, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the things that I look out for as a book editor in the first pass of a manuscript when I am self-editing, as well as when I'm editing for other people. There are quite a few things that I do really look out for because they're incredibly common mistakes. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about self-editing, how you can conduct the first read through of a book after you've given it time to rest for a few months, after you've gained some objectivity, then you are in the right place. Definitely stick around. There will also be a lot of cozy vibes. I intend to have a really nice, relaxing day, which I guess brings us to kind of like a few short updates. As you know, I am a very busy person. I feel like busy is an understatement. I pretty much never stop, and I think that that needs to change, particularly over the next couple of months, because in being so busy, I end up backburnering my own writing. I don't know what else to say. I have an ongoing problem where, as a book editor, I spend so much time here in front of a screen working on books that by the time I have finished my work for the day, the last thing I want to do is work on my own writing. I've talked about this extensively on my channel, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse with another dead horse, but I will just say the struggle for balance is ongoing. I will say I have kept in my back pocket something of a plan. If I can save up a certain number for a fund, so this is like a financial goal that I'm setting for November and December, then I have decided to give myself the entirety of November and the entirety of December off. That being said, I already have one line edit that I have booked that is due, I think, at the end of November, so I do have one project in November that I have to do. I guess that kind of ruins everything. But I normally have 3 to 5 projects on my desk at a time. So working on one book, I would probably be able to knock that out relatively quickly and early, and then give myself as much of November and all of December off as possible. I'm gonna be honest, actually, I've already accomplished this financial goal. I'm just kind of deciding whether or not I'm psychologically prepared to go without income for a month and a half. I do love to work, and it's very nerve-wracking to sort of decide not to have any money for a month and a half, especially in this economy. But I think that this would be really conducive for me, my writing goals, and particularly for A Dark Sky Opens, which is a book that I have been working on for way too long, which is a book that is only a few chapters away from being ready to go out to my critique partners. So we're starting with this. We are going to actually prioritize this book today. I'm going to finish reading it all in one sitting. This is gonna be kind of a reading vlog for that reason. We're gonna have our chai tea, some autumn vibes. We're gonna read through this, and I will touch base with you all throughout the day as I progress through the book and talk a little bit more about those things that I look out for as a book editor, as well as, you know, as an author who is working on finishing a book. So with that being said, welcome. Thank you all for being here. I apologize once again for kind of falling off the grid, but we're back, and I will see you after this B-roll. It was at about this moment that I realized there is no way I'm going to be able to read this entire manuscript in one sitting. I don't know what made me think I would be capable of doing that, but yeah, this was not going to happen. Primarily because not only was this manuscript 600 pages long, but I was doing a lot of work. I was taking a lot of notes. I was cultivating a revision plan. I was studying each plot point. I talk more about this process later, so I'm not going to elaborate now, but there was a lot more to it. So I ended up going to bed that night, sleeping on it, and the following morning I decided to make a new game plan and set a new, more realistic goal for this particular read through. Something I've been doing recently is taking a walk in the morning. I don't know if it's just me trying to capitalize on what is left of the good weather, but I have been really enjoying it. I think that it helps me really set the day off on the right foot, and it helps me get a clear mind. And today I really benefited from that, I think more so than usual. I slept terribly, which I'll talk about in a moment as well, but this gave me an opportunity to really mull over what a realistic goal for this read-through would look like. And the biggest priority was to just finish it. I have stopped, I have started, I have restarted again. I have been trying to get this read-through done for quite literally a year. I needed to just finish reading it. Good morning. I apologize for my overall lack of enthusiasm. I did not sleep well last night. I actually went to bed at around 10:30, woke up at 2:30, stayed up until 6:30, slept for 1 hour, then got up very, very, very slowly. I wasn't really moving until around 8 o'clock this morning. And the fact that it's kind of gloomy outside and drizzling is definitely not helping me wake up. I've always been kind of an insomniac, but last night it was just good old-fashioned anxiety because I have a lot to do in the next 7 days. So all night I was thinking about how I'm going to accomplish all of these things on my list. And it's going to be a relatively intense week. I really wanted my 1 day off yesterday to be productive. I wanted to finish reading all of A Dark Sky Opens, but now I am realizing, actually last night before bed I was realizing, this is an impossible task. I do not know what made me think I would be able to finish reading 600 pages in 1 day, particularly when I'm not just reading the book, I'm taking notes. I'm looking at book 1 and refreshing on my own lore. I'm trying to look at the plot and how the plot is paced. I'm taking notes in the actual manuscript as well as in a separate log in a notebook. And it was not just me sitting down and reading and enjoying the book, okay? There was like so much more to it. This takes me to my updated goal. I am going to shoot to read about 150 pages of this book a day. And when the book is done being read, it's done being read. I'm taking you along with me regardless. This is just gonna go from a 1 day vlog to a multi-day vlog, and that is going to be fine. It's gonna be fine. But first, let me get a sip of this chai and then we'll talk about my process. Let's chug our chai, not sip it. Oh my God, I totally forgot that I have a little Pop-Tart up here. Yay. Without further ado, here she is. We've gotten to page 159. I have been using these tabs to mark the POV chapters of each character. So as you can see, we're mostly in Eos's POV, and then we just started to implement Merope's. If you've read When Stars Burn Out, then you may be happy to know that I do have Apollo's POV in this book, but he does not come into play until the midway point. So we have mostly Eos and Merope, and then I've been using some tabs on top to keep track of all of the plot and pinch points. This is something that I do for every manuscript that either I write and I'm looking to revise, or the manuscripts that I'm editing for clients. So let's talk a little bit about that process. When it comes to self-editing, particularly if you're this is so ugly and I am so sorry. I might have to tighten this frame. I can't stand it. When it comes to giving your manuscript time to breathe and reapproaching it from an objective standpoint, something that's really integral is to study the pace of the story. Plot structure is basically ensuring pace. So not only does plot structure guarantee that you're incorporating all of the elements of a good story, but it makes sure that you're walking the line between overwhelming the reader and boring the reader. That is the reason pacing is so important. If you have a strong first plot point, first pinch point, midpoint, you will not have a mushy middle. So what I like to do is I like to refer to any craft book. I'm reading this one right now by K.M. Weiland. It's actually really good and I highly recommend picking up some of her books. She's pretty good at condensing everything that I've read about plot into one well-written book. So good job, K.M. Weiland. So basically what I like to do if I'm revising or editing a book is I will take the book, and as I am combing through it, I will refer to a craft book. Any craft book will do. It almost acts as a checklist for every plot point. So once I hit the hook or the first plot point or the first pinch point or the midpoint, I will be combing through the craft book at the same time as this book, and I'm able to kind of refresh on what each plot point will ideally have. Obviously, you don't need to have an actual physical copy of a book. You could very easily just Google plot structure and look at each plot point and evaluate it as you go through your draft. But that was something that I was doing for Dark Sky Opens, I think particularly because this book, unfortunately, was not thoroughly plotted. I did pants most of this book, and I very much regret doing that because now I have to clean up that mess. Now things are definitely not quite paced the way that I would like, and it's a very long book already, so we're gonna have to be doing some fine tuning as far as that is concerned. When it comes to self-editing your work, I also highly recommend this book, which is Intuitive Editing, A Creative and Practical Guide to Revising Your Writing by Tiffany Yates Martin. This is a great reference. Years ago, I got a wild hair and thought about actually writing my first nonfiction book, which would be all about self-editing, because as an editor, I am implementing all of my editorial skills on my own manuscript all the time, and I feel like I've got a really good grasp for how to approach your book as objectively as possible. But then I picked up this book and she beat me to it. I could have written this myself word for word. She has detailed everything exactly the way that I would. It is such a good reference if you're interested in diving into your book and looking at it a little more objectively. For example, I have been combing through this, and as you can see, I feel compelled to basically highlight every single line. That's when you know it's good. So I recommend this. I'll link this below. I'll go ahead and link this below too if you're interested in either of these books. The next thing I do, which I actually don't have with me right now, is take a sheet of paper, divide it into half. One column I will label local, the other column I will label global, and those are obviously local adjustments versus global adjustments to the overall manuscript. When it comes to local adjustments, I usually will write those at the chapter head inside the actual draft, just to remind me what I'm trying to get at in that particular chapter. The global column is obviously really important because that pertains to the overall book and revisions that need to be applied from start to finish, be it the change of a character name, character appearance, the existence of a character in general, things that may filter into every single chapter. I'm actually working on a completely separate video right now that is the top 6 issues that I see the most as a book editor. I cannot wait to talk about those issues because when I tell you, I see them constantly. And until you know what they are, you really don't even realize that you are making those mistakes. So stay tuned for that video soon. But I will say I'm looking for all 6 of those issues, even in my own work, because they are really easy to to make without even realizing it. Also, you may be wondering why I'm working with a printed manuscript. This is also a huge, huge, huge part of my process. If I do not work with a hard copy, then I will be far too tempted to make adjustments on the fly. This is a slippery slope. Then you end up spending all of your time actually trying to make adjustments instead of reading the book all the way through. No, the goal is to read the book all the way through, because again, one of the biggest things we're looking out for is the pacing, and you can't really get that unless you're just reading it all the way through. So yes, working with a hard copy, however I print that out, is absolutely critical to my process, as well as sort of reflecting on the plot points. Again, if you want some extra help, this is a really, really good resource to start with. And then when we embark upon revisions, that's a whole other thing. Today I have a lot of editing to do. I'm gonna call it here. I don't honestly know if I'm gonna take you along with me because it's just me working. Maybe I'll show you some B-roll, we'll see. But I need to get to work. The goal going forward is 150 pages of this draft a day, and that will be something I'm happy with. That means within the next week or week and a half, I will hopefully have this book completely ready for me to dive into writing the final 10 or so chapters of this book. Hello and good morning. It is properly cold outside. Like, it's actually starting to look a little bit too much like winter outside here. Anyway, what day is it? It is Monday, October 27th, 10:21 in the morning. We finished our read through of A Dark Sky Opens. This has been a great reminder that it is so important to give your manuscript some time to breathe, to give yourself some time to breathe. And this is something that I think a lot of people just skip over. If I could have given this 6 months, I think I probably would have. Every single day that I give myself space from the manuscript is a day in which I am gaining more emotional distance. And that emotional distance is what gives you the ability to remove those rose-colored glasses and see the manuscript for what it really is. Prior to that, you're kind of a love-struck teenager who is experiencing infatuation for the first time, and you're looking at this book and you think it's just perfect and you're missing all of the red flags. But with some time and distance, you will see those red flags. For example, during this read-through, I realized that there were 2 relatively massive oversights. Now, these don't necessarily require developmental or substantive editing. I'm gonna have to go in there and write some brand new material to explain these things, because the oversight was just that I didn't explain these things. But I have read and reread this book so many times that it honestly flabbergasts me to think that I didn't notice that until now. Would a critique partner have noticed? Maybe. Would an editor have noticed? Yes, but we're trying to save ourselves money and time here by doing as much on our own as we can, and I think that that's the importance of self-editing. I, as an editor, have worked with numerous clients who admittedly hire me before they probably should, and they end up spending more money having me conduct multiple rounds of revision for them and giving them various different editorial passes instead of just working on it independently for as long as they can and then handing the book over. Now, that being said, sometimes it's part of their process to just hand the book off to an editor immediately. That is totally fine. But I do think if you're looking to save money, just teach yourself how to self-edit. Teach yourself how to get through those initial editorial passes all on your own, and you will be golden. Now, I am on kind of a tight editing deadline. I have a book that is due in 4 days, and so I need to be working. But we're going to really quickly give you an update on A Dark Sky Opens, the goals that I have for it, and specifically for November. So let's dive in. But first, I need to pin this to my shirt as much as I absolutely hate the way it looks. Okay, here she is. She's looking great. These are all POVs. These are all structural, plot point, scene and sequence notes. I will talk about scene and sequence in another video because this one is already running a little bit long. But I think that keeping tabs on that literally is going to be incredibly helpful when you're looking at your book objectively and when you're discerning whether or not it needs structural adjustments. The one thing I will tell you is that I was a little alarmed to discover that the midpoint is here. The midpoint is here. That is a bit late. I do have, let me show you what I've got left to write. I'm such a hard copy person, I'm so sorry. These are the scenes that I have left to write, but mind you, one scene does not mean one chapter. One scene can mean many chapters. So there is a bit more left to write than I was telling myself originally, which is okay because the midpoint is incredibly late in this draft. That being said, we're working with 3 different character POVs, and I was tempted to place the midpoint several chapters prior to where I feel it actually is the most suitable. So there is a significant chunk of the second act where you're not seeing the protagonist very much, and you can kind of see, well, I guess you can't really see, but maybe you can see that there's a little jump in there where all of a sudden we're talking more to Apollo and to Merope than we are Eos. Now, Apollo and Merope each have their own midpoint equivalent, and those take place a lot earlier than Eos's. So you get this feeling of things really building up and starting to feel quite climactic. But it really is not until Eos experiences this significant change. This is genuinely a death and a rebirth of her character. And interestingly enough, it's still not as intense as her Dark Night of the Soul, but that is where her midpoint is. And so I decided to tag it there, but that does mean that it is a little bit late. We'll see how that looks when the draft is actually finished. So this takes me to the goals that I have for November, because can you believe that it's already the end of October? I almost cannot believe it. I have not kept tabs on the entire NaNoWriMo debacle, but I have not even considered doing it just because it is unfortunately irrelevant to my entire writing process and has been for years. But we're going into November. November is, without debate, probably the best writing month in the entire year, and I want to use it to my advantage. So I have decided to back burner Project Godspell for all of November and focus on finishing A Dark Sky Opens. This was literally my goal last year, so we're a year late. We're beyond a year late, let's be honest, Anna. I think I might be able to pull this off, particularly if I end up taking a step back from editing, which I'm still planning to do. So I do have a more detailed plan in place for how I specifically intend to finish this book, how I want to approach these remaining scenes, and how I'm going to be embarking upon the next round of revisions. Those will all be topics that I discuss in a future video. For now, I'm going to log off. I've got to get to work. If you're going to shoot for the 50,000 word goal or any goal, let me know down below. I will be back soon with a video of my own on the goals that I'm going to be setting for that month. But I must encourage us all, if we actually succeed in November, let's give ourselves some time, maybe January, February, March, to give the manuscript time to breathe. Okay, I'm hopping off. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all for being here. Bye.